Okay, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar for tonight. Tonight we'll be doing a pre-fair orientation for the upcoming American boarding school fairs out here in Southeast Asia, uh, Singapore, followed by Jakarta, then Bangkok, then Kuala Lumpur, and actually Middle East as well, Dubai. So this would be our last pre-fair orientation, and we hope that families who listen to this orientation will be able to be more ready for the fairs that will be coming up within the next 2 weeks. Um, this is a brief intro about myself. I've been in the field for over 20 years as an education consultant, specializing in placing students to top boarding schools overseas. I place students in top boarding schools in America, England, Canada, Switzerland, basically anywhere with top boarding schools I focus on, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, with the school year calendar beginning in September. So the only places I don't really work actively in would be the schools in the Southern Hemisphere, like Australia or New Zealand or South Africa, whereas the school year calendar begins in January. Um, Over my years of experience, I've been helping different students in different walks of life and match them to a suitable boarding schools. It is within my hope that over the course of coming few weeks, more and more families will get introduced to the transformative power of boarding education. It is a really good thing, and this is something that I love doing even now in my semi-retirement years. I love talking about boarding schools. So without further ado, let's get into our topic for today. We'll talk a little bit about purpose, followed by school research, what to look for, and interactions with the schools. Now, what is the purpose of the upcoming American boarding school fairs? All right. So these fairs are meant to allow the families to understand the overall benefits of boarding education. All right. It is not meant to be able to identify the exact match between a particular student and a particular school. All right. We invite on average of anywhere between 15 to 35 boarding schools into any given city. Singapore and Bangkok would attract a larger number of schools, whereas Kuala Lumpur and Jakarta will be their first year. So we will start up being a little bit more conservative, around 15 schools or so. But as a whole, we have a kind of a panoramic view of a spectrum, a wide spectrum of boarding schools participating. And it is our hope that through the exposure to these boarding schools as a whole, families will come to understand the overall benefits of boarding education. And in this particular case, American boarding education, which is the bulk of the schools. Um, to identify the fit between boarding schools, boarding education, and my child's developmental needs. So, talking about what these schools are and what they offer, we hope that it will also spark certain conversation within the family about, actually, what does my son need? What does my daughter need? Right? And understand how these schools can help supply what our child needs. And more importantly, uh, all boarding schools are not created equal, or more like all boarding schools are created different. And so, as a whole, participating in these fairs and talking with all these schools will give us a sense as to how they more or less differ from one another, even though they are all boarding schools. All right, they are all great boarding schools. But after you talk to them a little bit more, you will get a feel that they are a little different. Their culture is a little different. What they offer in terms of academic curriculum, signature program, the type of sports they offer, the extracurricular clubs that they offer are all slightly different. All right. Because especially the American way of doing education, they all have their own unique approaches. And therefore, parents who will be looking at boarding schools will find them, they all differ from each other slightly. And last, it will be to identify the type of boarding school that would fit my child the most. So at the end of the 3 hour journey for the bigger fairs, or the an hour and a half or 2 hour journey for the smaller fairs, we hope that families will be able to walk away understanding the type of boarding school that would fit your child the most. And we're going to talk about in what way or in what parameters. So first, let's talk about the preparation, right? And to understand the schools. To Before we walk into the fairs, it will be more effective and more productive for the family if we get a chance to do some research on the schools in advance. Now, just by sheer uh, numbers, we have about, let's say, 35 or so, let's say 36 schools in a 3 hour window. So you can do the math. About 12 schools in an hour. And there's about 5 minutes per school that you can spend with talking. That's assuming there's no waiting line. If you have waiting line, that means your talk time will be actually reduced accordingly. So therefore, there isn't a whole lot of interaction if you have to cover all the schools. So it would be great if we can do some research in advance on the schools that will be coming to the fairs and to circle out the top schools that we really want to know. And then when you walk into the fair, you already have a list of 10, 12, 15 schools that you really want to get. In general, realistically, a family might end up being able to talk to half or two-thirds of all the schools that are participating, simply because of the queue time. All right, you have to stand in line, wait for your opportunity to talk. And once you talk, you do spend the time talking to the officer, to the people at the booth. And therefore, 3 hours will just fly by. And you will unlikely be able to talk to every single school. So therefore, it pays to do research in advance so that you know what are the schools that you want to zero in and really dig in, know more about them. How to do school research. All right. So you can obviously first and foremost visit the school's website and understand whether the school, fulfills your basic requirement or not. Some families are very much into East Coast, West Coast. Some are looking for co-ed or versus single gender, right? Different families have different requirements. Other families might be attracted to a particular offering of sport or music program, right? So they are looking for schools that offer, let's say, squash. And if you're looking for squash, schools that offer squash, there are some other schools that don't offer squash. Then you may want to not consider, for example. So there are certain elements that we can, upon which we can decide whether or not a school will be suitable for our child for consideration. Next, after we look into zero in as to what type of schools we're looking at, we should now consider into the social media to understand the culture, how they present themselves also says a lot about the culture, whether they are more conservative, they are more liberal, whether they are more casual, or they are a little bit more uptight, right? And these are all different ways of conducting and portraying the educational experience. There's no right or wrong. It's more like apples and orange. It's what is um, beneficial, what is matching to our child's needs. Next, it will be talking to the representatives, the school representatives. And here there are three types: school officers, current parents, and alumni. And they each of them carry unique perspectives. The school officers, they are the officers that work at the admission offices. Obviously, they know the schools the best, as in the current stage of affairs, and obviously, they know how to present the strongest elements, the benefits of their schools. Parents, on the other hand, usually they would be able to provide a parental point of view from the parents' perspectives, whereas alumni would be able to represent a student's experience perspective. And they each carry their unique angles. So it would be best to speak to all of them wherever available to collect the most balanced perspective about any school. Now, what to look for in a website? The first and foremost is the factual information. So we look at the size, student population. That is the first thing. A big school operates very differently than a small school, especially in a boarding context. A lot of families, they say, hey, my international school, that the international school that my child is currently attending is already what, 1,500, even 2,000 lot strong. And so even the biggest boarding school like Andover and Exeter, right, is small by comparison. Well, that is actually not necessarily the case in the context of a boarding environment. In a boarding environment, more than 1,000 students uh, large is already very large. Okay, for students to really be able to support each other and get to know each other very well, usually from a science research point of view, is somewhere between around 400 student body. All right. So, 500 plus 600 is already medium size. 800 is large size, and more than 1,000 students is extra large. If you can just imagine using the size of a garment, for example, extra small, small, medium, large, extra large. Also, look into the location of the school. Here, I mentioned state, it's East Coast, West Coast, or somewhere in between, but it's more than that. Okay, the location is also reflected upon the setting. It's more location is more a little bit more macro, but the setting is a little bit more micro. And in terms of, is it closer to a city or is it more like in the middle of nowhere in the countryside? It affects the type of environment. It affects the type of activities that can happen over the weekend. Some students are very much drawn to the urban culture of Boston, New York, or Washington, D.C., say, for example. And they will be attracted to schools that are, relatively speaking, closer to the urban centers. Whereas some students really love the nature and really attracted to the national parks or the forestry that surround the boarding school. And they would love the countryside more. So again, not all boarding schools are created equal. And in fact, they were all created with a different mission, with a different purpose, and with a different approach in mind. Boarding ratio, that's another key element that families will need to look into when comparing schools. Of course, when we're looking at boarding schools, we're looking at schools that have borders. But schools, a boarding school can have 80, 90% borders, and yet they also can have 20 to 30% borders. And the experience will be very different. A school that has the majority of the student body being in day school, sometimes, at times, you can feel a little bit like a day school feel. All right. So that's why a lot of the families, when they are looking at boarding schools, they're looking for schools with a high boarding ratio. So look into the boarding ratio of the school that you are researching and determine or not whether this is something that would matter to you as a family. Last, I mentioned about co-ed versus single gender. Some families are deliberately looking at single gender schools. For example, there are some fabulous boys' schools and girls' schools with a teaching pedagogy that is most suitable for the boys and for the girls. And there are also other families who prefer a co-ed environment because the world out here is co-ed, and therefore, they want the schools also to be co-ed as well. Next, when we look at a school, we also should be focusing and concentrating on what is being offered, other than the, at a glance cover, the factual, the infrastructure setting. We should also look into what they are offering to the student body. First and foremost has to be academics. We send our child over to boarding schools first and foremost to study. All right, this is what they are supposed to do at their age, right? 14 to 18 years old. This is what they are supposed to do primarily. So, what do they offer in terms of course catalog? Now, American boarding schools, most of them do not operate under a national curriculum like A level or GCSE, nor IB, where everything is almost internationalized, it's all compartmentalized. So here we're looking into American boarding schools, each offering their unique set of courses for their student. And a lot of times, the courses that they offer, as sometimes it can come from, the demand from the student body. Sometimes it can actually come from the skill set of the faculty members. And because different teachers, they carry of them different unique expertise areas and their research focus. So therefore, the type of courses being offered in the top American boarding schools are all different. Many parents talk about AP, but the top American boarding schools are beyond AP. They are not restricted by AP. They, they, they would be teaching their students in a subject that they are strong in, they are strongest in, so that their student will be able to be learning from the pro of the pros. Next, we should also be looking at sports, especially for those students who are athletes. You want to be able to go into a school that support the sports of your passion. However, we also want to understand that American boarding education by itself is holistic in nature. Top American boarding schools do not take pride in producing a semi-professional athlete. That's not their goal. Their goal is to produce world leaders in their respective fields, in business, in government, and other public sectors. So they want their students to be well-rounded. Sports is simply a means to train up their character. It's a character training medium, right? But nonetheless, sports is sports. It's fun, right? And we should therefore focus on a wide variety of offering a wide variety of sports to the student body. And therefore, we should look into what other sports are available from the school that might interest my child. That in itself is important from a developmental point of view. Other areas, not every student is an athlete. Some are musicians. Some are into performing arts, like singing, dancing, theater production. Some are into visual arts and different forms of visual arts. Different schools. Some schools would offer glass blowing. Right? That's pretty cool, right? Some others would offer jewelry design. That also pretty cool. Yeah, some others will also offer fashion design. So different schools would offer different courses subject to their own resources, be it on facilities as well as on faculty. Clubs and activities. Here, bigger schools have an edge. Bigger schools obviously will have more clubs and activities than smaller schools. But bigger doesn't necessarily mean better. All right. So you have to look into the schools with the clubs and activities that your child wants to be engaged, most interested in. So therefore, you have to dig into the clubs and activities offerings of each school to determine. Last but not least, it is the signature programs. American boarding schools, as I mentioned, not only do they differ from one another in their course offerings, they try to strive to differ from one another in their unique offerings, which they call signature programs. Signature programs in its original form are academic in nature, but gradually it has evolved over the years to be all-encompassing. For example, um, some schools would take into consideration of offering aviation engineering. So it's not just physics, chemistry, and biology. Well, not only getting into engineering, but getting all the way into aviation engineering. Wow, that's pretty cool for a high school student. But not only that, they would go all the way into, well, you study aviation engineering, right? So we'll let you actually practice and try to fly an airplane. You actually, at the end of the course, you actually get a pilot license. So it's pretty cool, right? This is just simply one out of many signature programs. Others could be doing scuba diving and doing sea turtle research, right? So you get to, do your get, get your hands wet, right? Get your body wet with scuba diving, and at the same time doing marine science, biology research into sea turtles at the same time. It's pretty cool. All right. So these are all signature programs. Other signature programs would involve building drones, that we are all accustomed to. These robotic gadgets that fly in the skies. These are all the signature programs. Others could be environmental, studies. Others could be doing internship in Washington, D.C., in the areas of political science and economics. All that are signature programs are part of. So please be sure to look into the school's website and understand what type of signature programs are being offered. In social media, I mentioned earlier, again, we should look into the type of content and more importantly, the type of communication tone and style. All right. So again, what type of content does the school highlight? What they tend to like to highlight, right? It demonstrates what is important to them, right? Do you see a lot of happy faces, or do you see a lot of people winning trophies, right? Those are different. Um, Communication tone and style is a more uptight, more progressive, more liberal, more casual, right? And this you will understand the school's vibe and fit. Now, when we get to talk to the school representative, this is the area where we can know the schools the most because website and social media are all highly crafted, right? They are there to present and project a very professional image about a school. It is actually talking to live human beings that will actually understand what the school is really like behind the curtains. All right. So therefore, when you talk to officers, like over here on the share screen, right, you get to see an officer like smiling and talking happily with the family members, right? You get a feel as to what the officer's personality is like. And the officer and the officers are more often than not chosen for their personality and their presentation style to be the school's ambassadors. So therefore, the officer's personality does make a statement about school. So get to talk to the school officers and understand what type of personality are there to represent the schools. It says something about the schools. Others on the right-hand side of the screen, we'll talk about talking to parents as well as alumni. These people have children that are going through the school's educational experiences, or these are students who well, are people who used to study in that school many, many years back, and now they're alumni alumni, and they will be able to share their firsthand experiences of what life in that school is really like. Again, do not just blindly take all in what we observe from the website and from the social media. A lot of times when the rubber meets the ground, it's really the human beings and the encounter that will really light what that school is really like. Interactions are usually divided into three types: before the fair, at the fair, and after the fair. Okay, so I mentioned about before the fair, we're supposed to do research, right? Sit down and do a deep dive and understand what are the schools that are coming to the fair, and which are the schools that we want to have a deeper encounter on that day, because you are unlikely going to be able to talk to every single school. So you might want to talk to the schools that would interest you the most. So it pays to do the research beforehand. During the fair, you have about on average 3 to 5 minutes to talk to an school officer or a current parent or alumni, right? So definitely, you have to do the hand leaving a good impression, right? I'm not too worried about the parents being able to leave a good impression. It is really the student that I'm more concerned with, that it will be a good encounter, it will be a good exercise for them to practice their PR skill, public relations skills, right? How do they present themselves? How do they project themselves in front of the school officers? And after the fair, it's really about beginning a relationship. So do not think that the officers after the fairs would all forget about me and all that. No, the fairs should be the beginning of a much longer relationship, especially if this is a school that you want to apply to. Right? If this is a school that after talking, you realize that you're not that interested and you will not apply to, so this part after the fair does not really apply. But more often than not, through the fairs, you will encounter some schools that, whoa, I get really excited by what the officer says. And I really want to apply to the school. And after the fair, this is the time to begin to have a relationship by typing out a thank you letter, right? So they will usually give you a business card for the officers. Get the business card and type a good thank you email afterwards. That would get the relationship started, and that would leave down a good beginning for a long relationship to come over the next couple of months. Q&A. Now, when you are at the fair, you are not doing an interview. They are not interrogating you. They will be asking you questions. You'll be asking them questions. It's a conversation. So therefore, when you walk into, and when it's your turn to talk to the school officers, to talk to the current parents or alumni, prepare questions in advance, right? Don't just scratching your head and say, what am I going to say, right? Think about the type of questions that you want to say while you're waiting in line, while you're waiting in the queue. Sometimes overhearing what the family in front of you are talking about can help inspire some type of new questions for your case, for your family. Prepare questions in advance, prepare questions that are open-ended, and hopefully focus more on the qualitative aspect. Of course, the quantitative element are mostly covered and be available on the website already. All right. But it's the qualitative one that are hidden behind the curtains. And this is what we as families, we as parents want to dig up through the encounter with the representatives. We have to bear in mind, while we are asking questions, in a sense, we are also presenting about ourselves. We're presenting to the school representatives whether or not we have done our homework. That's first and foremost. All right. They are all going to be courteous. But while listening to your question, they know that whether you have done your research or not about that school. All right. And and you want to be able to ask questions in a way that does present and project a positive image about your family. All right. And again, if especially if this is a school that you want to apply to afterwards, being able to present a positive impression during the encounter would be a key towards establishing a long and healthy relationship. And during the conversation, also take of how the representatives answer your questions, not just about the contents of their reply. That is important, but it's also about how they answer your questions, right? Are they interested in you? Are they focused on your needs, or are they just trying to brush it off, right? Are they excited? Are they personally invested in the conversation? Or do they look very aloof and just trying to be there to do the job, right? So um, that also says something about the culture and the environment of the school. All right. So take note of how the representatives are answering your questions as well. Now, these are the learning resources that we at Sesameed provide. We have webinar recording. We also have a lot of downloads that are relevant to the family's research. And obviously, we also have a lot of videos for the from the interviews that we conduct with the schools. All these are available for our families' use, and they are all there available for public access. Here, we have come to the end of our presentation, and I would like to open up for Q&A among our audience today, please.
I have
So,
one
Mint,
question.
yes,
Yes.
would you like to relate the questions for me?
So our family who share the question, I've already shared before the webinar session. So some part of it Daniel already answered in the slides in the content, but like let's dig into the question more. So this question is about how can we find out the school culture and the environment of the school fit the child, what question to ask, because this family or some family will have doing their extensive research on the school they are interested in, things they can find online, things they can find through the school marketing materials. But what are the other thing? What are the specific question that they gotta ask the school representative, the volunteer family at the fairs to find out
Sure.
if the culture fits their child?
Okay. So first of all, to answer that question, it begs the deeper question of what does child need? All right. So that is really about understanding your child. Is my child like all organized, all independent, all ready to go? They just need to have a wider exposure to look at what the world's like. That type of children would be more, in general, would be more suited for bigger environments. They are ready for the larger world. Whereas some students, they are sometimes they can be a little bit timid. Sometimes they might not be able to get their acts all together. They might sometimes oversleep. They might sometimes forget some homework and all that. They may need a little bit more support. They might they might benefit more from a smaller, cozier environment with a more structured type of faculty supervision. All right. So therefore, um, as I mentioned, size is key. This one. This is very important. A big school versus a small school. A small school, people can argue, you don't get enough of a diversity. You don't get exposed enough. You don't get to see enough of the world. So on the other hand, if too big of a school, it also lacks the type of support that your child might need. Every school will say they will support your child. Even big schools such as Andover or Exeter, they will brag about that. But really, like for a school of 1,100 people strong, how closely can they really support the child? Just by the way they select the student, will be choosing the students who are more independent, who are more mature, who kind of get the acts, well, are able to get the acts together. So the next question that parents can also ask while talking to the school will in fact be, what are the attributes about a student that you value the most? Listen to what they say, or even ask them, what type of students will benefit most from your school? Aha, they cannot say anyone under the sun, right? That would not work, right? So that would kind of force them to kind of, unveil their cards as to what are the target audience, what are the target student body. So ask them, right? What type of students will benefit from your school's education the most? All right. And what are your strongest at? Ask them this pointed question. You have to pin them down, but in a very polite way, and they will answer you. Because they all understand nothing is best for everyone, right? If you say my product is best for everyone, that means my product is not good for anyone, right? So they will have a particular niche. It's a education that the education experience it itself is a product, right? Some people will benefit more than some others. So as the job of the mission office is to be able to highlight what the strengths are and to look for the best match, to match it, the experience to a group of student body who will be able to benefit the most from their resources and what they can offer. Any other question?
Next question is that when we waiting between the rational part of like all these school fit my child, but when I meet the representative at the fair, the feeling is off. How to weigh that, the feeling and the rational part?
I would say we should put more weighting on the human element because at the end of the day, it is the human element that would represent the actual experience. Whatever that you see on the website, however beautiful, however convincing that the statistics might turn out to be, at the end of the day, it is the experience. So the human element is important. Now, on the other hand, I would not uh, write off a school just because we did not have the best experience with one of the representatives. All right. So take it with a grain of salt, so to speak. But you just have one data point. And that's why I always encourage our families, use the fairs as a starting point. It's not the ending point. It's not the last point of contact. It is just a starting point. All right. The real experience allowing the families to experience a school is the campus visit, is the campus tour. All right. And ultimately, it will be the revisit day, okay, where your child will be able to spend a full day, like from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock at the school to experience what life is like in a typical day. And that would happen in late March, early April to all those students who have been given an offer to that school. But before then, families can still come to understand a school more by visiting the school through a campus tour, followed by an interview, on-campus interview. We, as a consultant, we encourage all of our families to conduct the interview on campus. And part of the on-campus arrangement will be they will first have a campus tour in the first half of the encounter. And then the second half of the encounter would be reserved for interviews. So you actually get to have a feel of that's what that school is like while conducting a in-person interview on campus. And after the campus interview, a lot of the times parents would rank the schools differently, almost every single time in my history. Once, the parents, when they when they do the research on the internet, on the website, going to whatever ranking, they have some sort of preconception. And they have a ranking. They apply to 10 schools, and these are the ranking: one, two, three, or five. This false ranking all the way to 10. After they gone through the school visit, then they get, oh, this is really not my son's type. Oh, this is really my daughter's type. It's really good. I love that school. And so the ranking would change. And so therefore, I would encourage all families to take the effort to, it's not cheap, it's expensive. You have to fly over there and you rent a rental car and you do all the hotel booking and all that stuff, but it's worth it. I mean, um, it's not just the tuition dollar also is expensive, and this is only a small part of that. But it's more important is 4 years of our child's life. Don't put them into a wrong school. All right. Okay.
That will be all for
Any
your
other question?
question. And any family who have more questions, feel free to ask more because that's all of the list that we have. And Daniel, if you could go back to the webinar resource slides, and I would
Oh,
like to guide our family to another related webinar that I encourage everyone to watch because if you don't have the list of the school that you want to visit at the fair yet, or even not at the fair, but for yourself. It's a webinar about building your boarding school list. It goes into the details of all the families, what to discuss, what to take on when you building a list of the school that would be in your interest in either researching or looking for more visiting days or deeper into meeting the school representative. So it will be on slide 11. This one is the first one.
okay.
So don't worry about this. These webinar slides will be sent to your email address by tomorrow morning. So you can rewatch this session. And secondly, if you interest in this webinar recording, building your boarding school list, it will be really beneficial to your family. I really recommend. And lastly, we are working with the school representative, interviewing them for you with all the questions representing the characteristic of their school. So the last one, watch the video interview. You can watch it on Boarding School Admit on YouTube. That's all for me.
Thank you, Mint. And so that would also be the last part of our webinar today. And really thank you for the families who have taken the time this evening to show at our webinar. Once again, we hope that the boarding school fairs will be a benefit to your family's journey to discover the transformative power of boarding education and how it would be able to benefit the growth of your children. So I hope to be able to see you guys as early as this Saturday in Singapore. And there we have 4 other fairs coming up in Jakarta on October 30th, in Bangkok on November 2nd, in Kuala Lumpur on November 4th, and ultimately in Dubai on November 9th. So I hope to be able to see all of you there.
Thank you so much. And everyone who wants to extend the invitation to your family and friend, we offer the free access code boarding 2025. If you want to, you can text our any Sesameed staff. We will be able to support you with the registration. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. See you there.